Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar of adding a commercial kitchen to your farm. Giving everybody a few more minutes to trickle in here as we're just right at 1 about in our time zone, and then we'll get started here shortly. Thanks for coming on board. Okay, everybody, I think I'm going to get started here. I want to welcome you guys today to our webinar, Adding a Commercial Kitchen to Your Farm. We're going to go through an extension tool put up by Oklahoma State University that kind of gives a feasibility analysis, and you kind of get to walk through and put in some numbers that are applicable to your farm operation and whether or not it would be feasible to add a commercial kitchen to that. I'm going to kind of give a little bit of an overview of this webinar series that we're doing so that you'll kind of be aware of what's going on if this is your first time to join us, and then we'll get into the demo tool. So with that, I am going to go ahead and get started with our presentation. So on the agenda today, there will be an introduction, kind of giving an overview of my work with the initiative, going into our work in Indian country here at the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative, uh, some of the background for the budget tool that was developed, and kind of going through the demo of that. My name is Blake Jackson. I am the policy officer and a staff attorney here at the University of Arkansas. We work a lot with tribes and tribal producers in areas affecting Native American uh, agriculture. And food throughout Sorry, everybody, I was having some audio connectivity issues there. So now that I'm reconnected, I was having some audio connectivity issues going on. Uh, as I said, my name is Blake Jackson. I'm here at the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative, and we are located in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and we kind of are at the intersection of federal Indian law and policy and agricultural food and law. So we are located in the office of the Vice Chancellor of Economic Development. We were originally located in the law school that was started with our founding director, Janie Sims Hipp, and that was further supported by the then dean of the law school, who was Stacy Leeds. She has since moved up in the ranks to be the Vice Chancellor of Economic Development here at the University of Arkansas. And we have since moved with her. We are now in the Office of Economic Development in the Vice Chancellor's office. Our mission is to enhance the wellness and health in tribal communities by advancing healthy food systems, diversified economic development, and cultural food traditions in Indian country. And we do this through a series of different efforts. We do this with strategic planning and technical assistance in a wide variety of areas, creating new executive and academic training programs, working with tribes and tribal organization and trying to pipeline and increase student enrollment in land-grant universities and food and agricultural related disciplines. So that's just kind of a brief overview of who we are as an organization. So our work in Indian country, as I said, it kind of falls in that where the areas of food and agricultural law and the area of federal Indian law kind of coincide. Based upon the background of our staff, we have a working knowledge of both of these areas, so we can offer the technical assistance and provide programmatic support where these areas kind of come together. And because there's different complexities with federal Indian law that don't apply to most other situations and other stakeholders in the agricultural sector, but also those in the agricultural sector might not be aware of those jurisdictional complexities. So we're there at kind of the intersection of that with our capacity and knowledge, and have kind of a relationship building throughout both sectors that allows us to better leverage our assistance to tribes through training and educational expertise and our outreach that we offer through those services. Some of our work, as showcased here, we are the FSMA Food Safety Training and Outreach Center for the FDA. We have a cooperative agreement to conduct training under the Produce Safety Rule under the Food Safety Modernization Act. We are the designated tribal center for that nationwide. More information on that's available at our website at www.nativefoodsafety.org, which is specifically for that effort. We're also working on developing an alternative curriculum that is more culturally appropriate. We're currently training with the Produce Safety Alliance curriculum that was developed by Cornell University, but we're working with that curriculum to tailor it more for an audience that for tribal audiences, because that is a general curriculum and we're trying to incorporate more tribal feedback into that to make it more applicable to the audiences that we work with. We recently released a model tribal food and agriculture code that has model sections of law for tribes and tribal attorneys to alter to meet the needs of tribal governments looking to occupy that unique regulatory space and adopt the code for within their own tribal laws. We're actively engaged in food policy roundtable discussions to kind of guide our efforts in this and implementing that. We support the work of the National Association of Food Distribution Programs on Indian Reservations, commonly known as the FDIPR program or the Commodities Program. It's the program officers and tribal leadership involved in that program. It's an association of these individuals that work together collaboratively throughout the nation to make sure that the program's needs are being met for the populations that it serves. We are currently in the process of planning our annual Native Youth and Food and Agriculture Leadership Summit for this July. We are actively involved in the Scaling Up project, which is what this webinar series is a part of, for helping those who are wanting to scale up their food and agricultural businesses in Indian country. What are the things that they might need to take that next step? And this is an effort that I'm heavily involved in. And also we support the work of the Native Farm Bill Coalition, a group of tribes and tribal organizations that have gotten together to collaboratively come up with legislative solutions needed to better tailor Farm Bill efforts and USDA programs for tribes and tribal producers. So we support those efforts through being the research partner for that group of organizations and entities. So as I said, this is part of a Scaling Up training series discussing agricultural production tools and economic forecast models to help build strong tribal food businesses and food systems throughout Indian country. You might be familiar with this if you attended our strawberry budget webinar a couple months back, and we also did a food safety and business planning webinar last month towards this. These trainings are part of a regularly occurring webinar and in-person project designed to provide a comprehensive set of business planning and feasibility analysis training tools for tribal governments and tribal food businesses. And support for this series is generously provided by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, who's funding these efforts. So today, one of the tools that I'm going to be demonstrating is developed by the Oklahoma State University Food and Agricultural Products Center. And it is a on-farm commercial kitchen financial analysis model. And it's a simulative template that provides a framework for an individual user who's wanting to kind of see what kind of inputs they might need to put in to dedicate to putting a commercial kitchen on their farming operation. If they have, if they're looking to do this, what are the costs associated with that? What are the financial things they have to plan for going forward? It's developed as a decision-making template because you can plug your numbers in this tool and kind of create a series of what-if scenarios and see if you alter your decision tools a little bit, how that's going to affect the bottom line and whether or not this is going to be a profitable business, and also what scenarios you would need to be acting under for the business to reach the profit margin that you would like. And as I said, the user will need to replace any default information in here with that of their own, specific to their own operation. We had a similar tool that we demonstrated with through the University of Arkansas. It was the strawberry budget tool, and it contains some default numbers for Northwest Arkansas, which is the audience that the tool is generally developed for. This one contains less default information, so it'll need more tailoring by the end user, but it should give a good idea for the things to be looking for going forward. And my contact information is here. gbjackso@uark.edu is my email if you have any questions, and also the contact information for the authors of this are also provided in the tool itself. So with that, I'm just going to jump right in and we can start looking at what needs to go here. So as I said, this is a decision-making template that allows you to compare what-if scenarios by entering your own numbers and assumptions if you are looking to do this with your own operation. We've kind of gone through and done an analysis of this. The authors are Professor Rodney Holcomb and Professor Tim Bowser at Oklahoma State University, and they've made this very user-friendly as much as they could, at least. As you'll see here, the green and the tan cells allow you to input your own information. And throughout here, there's going to be different pieces where you might not be able to input your information, but their materials put out say that this could also be altered for any individual situations. If there's places that you might not be able to put in your own information, just going forward and contacting the authors, they can definitely assist with that. So kind of going through here, there's a few different tabs in doing all this. There's a plant, property, and equipment tab that allows one to determine their processing activities, associated equipment and facility options, land value, and links to tabs for loan amortization and utilities estimation. There's a tab dedicated to production assumptions, where the values of the production of food products in the facility, including recipes, the yield per processing batch, packaging and labels expenses and production labor are allowed to be calculated. There is a tab to allow for the estimation of personnel expenses where salaried employees and for information on payroll taxes, fringe benefits, inflation, and so forth. There's a tab for market projection that you can see the expected plant capacity utilization in year one can be altered, but after that it's going to assume that you're using 100% of the capacity there, and then it expects and it kind of gives you an expected output price for the inflation rate. It gives you an idea of your expense projection based upon all your startup and annual supplies and other expenses that you account for here. There is a profit and loss summary, but the only adjustable piece here is the income tax rate, which kind of has been recently altered at the federal level. And return on investment gives you the ability to see what your return on investment would be going forward and investing in one of these operations. So with that, I'm going to kind of go tab by tab here and give you guys an overview for some of these tools and kind of give an idea for the values that you can put in specific to your own operation. So with that, I'm going to go into the plant, property, and equipment tab. As you make that a little bit bigger for everyone, getting in here, there's different categories for the uses that you could see in the kitchen. In the facility cost, you can estimate the square footage overall, but this is also further broken down by the use for the facility in which you're going to employ. So if you're looking to use part of the facility for drying, canning, baking, or drying and canning, drying and baking, or canning and baking, you'll see that there's a corresponding code section here throughout the top. And as you go down, it gives you some default pieces of equipment in here, and you're allowed to assign a purpose to that. So for instance, the 3-compartment sink, that's kind of a pre-filled cell here. It's dedicated that to be an all-purpose piece of equipment because the type of processing is for everything. And so with that, as you kind of go through here, you'll see that there's a different code assigned to each one of these, and throughout all of this, it creates a value total at the bottom dedicated to each processing purpose. And with all that being summed up, you can see the totals here at the top dedicated to each one. And from this, it creates a total for the chosen type of facility cost. So you get an overall cost of what the facility would cost to be built and maintained based upon these numbers. And these are totally amendable. For instance, if I wanted to change this value to 500 for the process area dedicated, you see the corresponding values adjust with that. And you can alter these if I wanted to make I mean, there's a pretty good inventory of equipment here already to work with, but if you're wanting to work with something different, you want to add a commercial thermometer in there, you can do that, or you can alter that as you see fit, particular to your operation. Just like this whole thing, the thing to take away is that this is totally amendable to your operation. But also you can code the type of facility that you want to go with here in terms of the process area throughout this and specialize. And you also can adjust the value of the land, because that's obviously going to be depend upon where you're at and the market conditions for real estate to build into these costs going forward. And at the top, you're able to kind of see the different ways that you can alter the funding for this in terms of borrowing. So you can change your loan term, the long-term interest rate, the percent that you're looking to finance. If you want to do 100% financing, that's obviously an option here. Or if there is a straight up grant that you've gotten for doing this, maybe through a federal program, you can alter that, and it's going to change the amount of the total cost of property, plant, and equipment, corresponding to all these alterations that you can make throughout here. The next tab that I'm going to get into here, and it gets pretty technical here in terms of the utility estimates. There are many different calculations you can go with, and this is obviously going to need to be tailored according to your own local utility rates, and that's going to differ throughout the country depending on who's engaged and what resources you're employing and the rate of usage, obviously. But you can see the different processes here, and you can alter how much each process is going to consume of energy, and it's going to give you a variable rate depending on that. It's probably best to go with an average rate here so that you're accounting for the high end of your cost, but also the low end of the cost. That way, if you have the average cost, it's going to give you a good across the board estimate for how much your annual costs are going to be. But as you can see here, if you wanted to change this to, let's just say 0.75, so you can get an idea of how that's going to affect the bottom line. It's going to look at the different consumptive amount that canning is going to take, and it's going to affect that over here in terms of your utility estimates. And from that, you're going to get an overall total based upon how much of you're paying for each of these, and it's going to give you the amount that you need to allocate for your utilities based upon this. So that kind of is another variable cost that you can use in going forward. And obviously through here, there are different links involved in the tab that lets you go back and forth between the tabs in case you want to go back and change your estimation or any of the values that you've assigned to this. So the utility piece is, highly customizable, but it's going to be kind of the theme you're going to see is that this is very specific to your own operation. But the piece that probably is the most useful here is the production estimates. From this, this is obviously going to be very tailored to what you're doing. I went in here already and kind of created my own product. I assumed I was making a salsa production line because that's a pretty easy one to come up with the ingredients, tomatoes, peppers, and you can go through here and figure out how much it's going to cost per batch for the product that you're making. So you need to include your raw ingredients and how much per batch it's going to cost. The batch is obviously going to depend upon the units that you're measuring in and how many units fit an overall batch. But these are just variable costs that are going to depend upon the variable cost of your raw ingredients. But depending upon your equipment and packaging needs, you can figure out how many jars of salsa. So if I had a bigger packaging capacity, I could produce 20 jars of salsa per batch. And depending upon the resources and the utilities I want to devote to that, I can alter the amount of batches per day that I can produce, and that's going to give me a calculation based upon the number of units produced each day, and it gives kind of a default rate for how many of these things are going to forfeit through waste or giveaways if you're donating some. And it kind of goes further into you have that little 3% attrition rate there. That's just a default figure that can be reassigned, and it tells you how much you're going to have available for sale each day. But the interesting thing here is that you don't have to do a lot of guesswork. So if you want to say, I want to up my price to if the cost goes up here, you can adjust the packaging to say 1.75 depending upon the market, $1.75. So it tells me that my total cost of goods sold is going to be $2.10 per unit, and I'm going to be spending $3,150 a day to produce everything at this rate. But if I want to see how much different my bottom line is going to be, I can alter the selling price. So if I wanted to sell this for $6, I want to sell it for 600. That'd be some good salsa. You can see that the revenue you're going to generate that's going to come from that, and then you net out your costs above. It's going to show you how much of a margin per day you're going to get, of a profit margin per day you're going to get, holding all these factors constant. And also if you're, accounting for, maybe you're not using the whole capacity of your production operation, you can obviously change. Say if I wanted to do 80% because I was, devoting 20% to product two, this is obviously the same input and editing abilities are over here. You can see how much different my costs are going to be according to how much I'm assigning to that. But also it allows you to do kind of a staffing estimate. So if you wanted to increase your staff, that's going to change into the amount of profit that's going to affect as well. And down here, there's some different note sections that you can add to kind of estimate this, and you could save different versions of it so you can see kind of the snapshot of where you're at in the time of planning for your business. Kind of further building upon that, this creates a depreciation figure. These fields are not green or tan, so the ability to alter these kind of goes hand in hand with being able to goes back to that plant, property, and equipment tab that we were at earlier. This is the first tab we had accessed. So everything that you put in here to calculate these values is going to affect your depreciation that I just shown. So this information is going to depend upon some of the other inputs that you had, but you can see here there's kind of a hot link to go back and forth between the two. So if you want to alter this, it kind of involves going back to the beginning. The personnel expenses, again, this kind of goes to see how many people you want to employ. So if you wanted to pay your plant manager, say $35,000, if it's a small business, that's obviously going to alter this. And so if you wanted to have 2 plant managers, how much is that going to cost? We just doubled our cost in terms of benefits and salaries. And if you know that you're going to have a busy season coming up, you can say, 1.5 pay times pay, or 2% of over, I guess that rounds that up to 2%, which that could be adjusted in the settings as well. But you can kind of alter your personnel costs here. One thing to note is that the tax rates are going to depend upon what current federal law reflects that's applicable to your business, and it's also going to need to be adjusted to include any state and local taxes as well in this percentage. And obviously you can adjust the wage inflation rate too to account for personnel expenses. The neat thing that's probably my favorite here is that you can input all these numbers to get these pieces that you have your costs and your expenses for personnel. You have your revenue that you're generating and your profit margin per product and batch. And the neat thing here is that it gives you a 10-year projection of the layouts of what you're able to come up with over a 10-year line based upon the values that you previously put in. So it's telling you kind of how what's going to cost, what your sales are going to be at this rate, at the rate of inflation, and at the cost that you've put in. And it's also going to give you your cost of goods sold. So you could even further go and alter your debt. If you want to change your interest rate, if there's a borrowing in debt, this is obviously going to depend upon the amount of resources that you have available and that you're wanting to leverage to put into this business. But you also have a 10-year borrowing and debt calculation based upon the amount of the loan that you're taking out. Further building on that, you have different expenses projected in a more itemized piece here based upon the other inputs that you've put in. You have labor, production expenses, variable expenses, that would be like your energy and your water, fuel consumption. And you also have your different tax rates and your interest and depreciation here based upon the other inputs you've put in terms of plant, property, and equipment at the first. But then you also have your supplies and other miscellaneous expenses that are reflected here. But this is also going to be tailored according to the inflation rate. So that's something to pay attention to with economic indicators. Further building on that, you have the profit and loss that comes from this. You have your figures we saw earlier in gross sales netted out for your expenses. and it gives you the before tax profit and then the tax rate that you've reflected here. So if I change this to, maybe a little bit more of a favorable rate at 25, just hypothetically speaking, you see it alters everything else because that's going to be that's going to give me the amount that I'm going to have to take out for taxes. And then you actually have your bottom line here in terms of your profit after taxes for the next 10 years. And with this, you also have an estimate of cash flows. So there's your cash flow statement to kind of calculate your on-hand assets. And last but not least, it kind of gives a return on investment each year. Obviously, you're going to have an expense in terms of startup, but you get the 10-year outlook on what your return on investment would be based upon the discount rate that you're putting in and the present value of income. And so these adjustments are made going forward. So like I said, this tool is highly customizable to fit your own circumstances. Back to the intro page, I will say that embedded within this tool, there is a user guide that it's embedded within the Excel file. If you have a Mac, there are some compatibility issues that I was running into with downloading this. Within the webinar, if you'll look in your handout section, I included the customizable, or not the, excuse me, of the instruction manual. I had to extrapolate that from the Excel file. So it kind of gives an overview of how to go into this. And further, if you want the link to download this, which this will be available in the slides that I'll put out after this. The link to download is right here. I'll put this up on the screen for a minute. And this will be also part of our broadcast where this video will be available. That still says Strawberry Production, ignore that. But you can see that this is the direct download link to the file for the Excel file for you to customize. And we'll put that out in our email blast so that you have that link available to you in a more convenient format. With that, if there's any questions, I can entertain those at this time. I see a couple of people saying they had some connectivity issues. Hopefully that is resolved, and the audio piece is working fine for everybody now. I'm having a good quality of that on my end. Hopefully everybody saw that. Sorry I didn't see that sooner, guys. But again, this will be recorded and put out if you want to view it at a later date. And with that, I guess that's it. Again, there's the link, and my contact information is here if you would like any more information on this tool or how to walk through some of that, but also the contact information for the authors is available in the Excel file itself, and I will work with our communications team to get that information out to you guys. I thank you for joining us, and I hope that you guys have a great rest of your week. I see one person saying they cannot download the link for the user guide. I will get with our IT team after this and have that sent out to you. So I'll make sure that you get a copy of that. Thank you. Anyway, have a great day, guys, and I will visit with you all soon on our next webinar. Appreciate it.